So while the Union versus Revs game is currently at halftime, which by the way, that game has already provided a little bit of shocker with the Revs going up 2-0 into halftime against the Supporters Shield champion. Let's talk about this game between TFC versus Nashville SC, where Nashville made some history tonight. They have become only the third ever expansion team in MLS to make it to the conference semifinal, but only become the second team to ever win a first round proper MLS playoff game, as the only other team to do that is the Chicago Fire back in 1998, and we know the history of that team becoming the only expansion team to ever lift the MLS Cup to this day. But in this game between Nashville versus TFC, this was a classic Nashville SC performance, and you know, I said during the preview, if Nashville can play the soccer that they're going to play and put a classic kind of their performance against TFC, I feel like Nashville is going to get the upset. And, you know, throughout this playoffs, I definitely have got a lot of prediction right, and kind of a lot of what I expected happened in the game. It turns out kind of differently. This was not one of those games. This was a game that I expected that Nashville was going to suffocate TFC and make them very hard to go on the attack, and that Nashville, on the other hand, is going to try to get chances on the other end, either through counterattack or from set pieces. And there were times that they got those chances, and albeit they did miss a couple of those chances throughout this game, and also unfortunately they had 3 goals that was disallowed in this game because of an offside. They were not going to be denied in terms of getting a victory in this one. Now, before we talk about this game, let's talk about some things before we get into, which is that TFC did get all of their attacking piece back in this game after most of them spent times on the IR. They were able to get Josie Altidore back, and Ayo Akinona was on the bench. And another guy that was also back in the starting 11 was Pablo Piatti, who was on the injury reserve list for a very bit. While for Nashville, they were definitely missing a big piece in Anibal Godoy in the midfield, but it doesn't seem like that was a big issue, even though they missed a big piece in the holding midfield position. Now, coming into the first half and in the first 45 minutes, I thought there was some nervy moments for Toronto. There was definitely a couple of times they gave the ball away very sloppily at the back, and there was a couple of times that Nashville could have just pounded on one of those mistakes and put the ball into the back of the net. Now, in the 12th minute, they thought that they got the opening goal of the game when Hunda Kadic was able to score, but this would be first of what would be 3 goals that they would be disallowed for offside, and this was rightfully called because Kadic just went a little bit too soon as he heads that one in. Before, on the other end, Pozuelo had an 18-yard shot that just went wide in the 19th minute before Willis robbed De Leon from close range, and you kind of started to see there was some cracks in the Nashville defense. You know, early on, Toronto was by far the team that was controlling the game, and Nashville was going with their classic kind of structure where they're just going to sit back and trying to defend and try to hit TFC on the counterattack or look for a set piece opportunity to score goals. Then in the 33rd minute, we had a very controversial moment where there was no red card given after it looked like Osorio kicked out on Mule. And, you know, I understand that some people will say, well, you know, this is the playoffs, and, you know, referee tend to be a little bit more lenient, and they don't really want to hand out the red card to really ruin a game. But I feel like this kicked out by Osorio is literally kind of similar to what happened on Saturday when, oh God, I forgot who exactly it was in that Orlando game. I think it was Kuan, that is. He basically kicked out on Mackay Stevens, and that, of course, was given a red card to Juan, and this looks like it was the same situation, yet in this situation, there's no red card given. So, yeah, this is just kind of, once again is a great example of why I just really frustrate how Pro is kind of refereeing this game, and there's just no inconsistency whatsoever of, well, you know, if that other game in a similar situation like that turns out to be a red card, then why isn't this a red card too? So, yeah, I thought TFC got very lucky, and Osorio is very lucky the fact that he is still on the pitch. And by the way, he didn't even get a card for this. That's just adds insult to injury of how shocking the fact that not only this was not a red card, but Osorio got away with not even getting a yellow card in this instant. But as we head to halftime, 0-0 in the second half, you can start to see that Nashville was starting to grow into confidence. And I thought the longer this game stayed 0-0, the more that Nashville is going to fancy their chances of knocking on the door. And if you're TFC, that's probably not a good feeling. The fact that they are feeling confident as this game continued to go 0-0, because in the second half, that is exactly what happened, where Nashville was looking optimistic in terms of trying to win the game in regular time. Mukhtar had a header that just went wide in the 48th minute before Kadit scored another one, but unfortunately the flag was once again raised, and the goal, of course, was not counted. And again, on the replay, it was pretty clear that he was about a step, just a little bit too far away from the last defender, and therefore it was the right call, the fact that the goal was disallowed. But yeah, I also thought that Nashville, again, they looked like they were by far looking the more confident side between both of these teams, and Toronto, they just look really slow when they go on the attack. And this has just been the issue for TFC down the stretch, and is the biggest issue in terms of their goal scoring, which is they just look very slow whenever they go on the attack, and they just don't really look like they were kind of show that intensity heading into this game, which, you know, if you're Greg Venny, that's got to be very disappointing, the fact that this is a playoff game and your team is not showing intensity whatsoever and just kind of look lapsadaisy. That has to really frustrate you. Now, in the 73rd minute, I thought Mukhtar should have scored from four yards out, as he had a free header that just went high. Before 2 minutes later, Mio had another big opportunity, and this was kind of similar to the Mukhtar chance, where he had a free header, but unfortunately he heads that one 4 yards out. And despite the fact that Nashville, you know, they came so close twice to scoring goals, I was also kind of starting to be a little bit concerned about these missed chances that Nashville is getting, because, you know, at the end of the day, Nashville is still the underdog coming into this game, and there's always that classic cliche about if you're the underdog and you don't take your chances, it's going to come back to haunt them later in the game. So I thought this was going to be the case once again, where those missed chances, if Nashville does lose this game, they're going to look back of those missed chances that they had, that they could have scored to really put this one not even go into extra time. Before Westberg was able to deny Zimmerman, who was trying to stab it from close range, but Westberg made a good save to deny him. So we head to extra time in this game, and in the first half of extra time, we had a couple of controversial call. First of all, in the 98th minute, talk about how Nashville, of course, got 3 goals that was disallowed because of offside. Well, this is the third one in the 98th minute, as they got probably a hat trick that they didn't wanted to have, which is 3 goals that was disallowed by offside, and that this time it was Mukhtar, the one that fell victim to it. Although out of the 3 offside call, this one was probably the closest to being overturned, because, you know, it definitely looked like Mukhtar just stay onside of the last defender, but at the same time, I didn't think the camera angle that they show us was very good, and even if they go to VAR to see this, I don't think it was clear and obvious that goal, of course, was given. Then just 5 minutes later, it looked like Larea was brought down by Lovitz in the box, but no penalty was called, and I thought if this was a penalty, this would have been a very harsh penalty for Nashville, because yes, there was a slight contact between Lovitz and Larea, but Larea kind of went down on the box way too easily and looked like he was trying to draw the penalty, but of course it wasn't given. So we head to the second half of extra time, and finally, after 107 minutes of frustration for Nashville of having 3 goals disallowed in this game, they finally were able to put the ball into the back net, and it's Danny Rios the one that scores the goal for Nashville. And originally, you know, this one was a great save from Westberg after Honi Mukhtar went through, and that I think maybe this one, even if Rios didn't touch it, this one was going to the back of net. But I think Rios just wanted to make sure that actually went into the back of net. I mean, after his team pretty much had 3 goals disallowed, he probably felt like he just got to put that one into the back of net to make sure that this one is actually going to count. And it did. Nashville takes a 1-0 lead, and I thought that was pretty much game, set, and match, because I knew Toronto was probably not going to come back from this, and that if Nashville was going to get one goal in this, I thought TFC was going to be very demoralized. But I will say that TFC did try their best to push for the equalizer, and that they had a chaotic moment in the 120 minute when the ball was kind of like trickling in the box, but unfortunately they weren't able to stab it home after there was chaos in the box. And in the end, Nashville able to walk away with a 1-0 victory over TFC, as the shots in this game, 21 shots compared to 12 that TFC had, 6 shots on goal compared to 4 that TFC had, 10 shots off target compared to 6 that TFC had, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that TFC had, and possession-wise, 62% possession compared to 38% possession that Nashville has. And I'll tell you what, you know, this is a big message that Nashville has just sent to the rest of the Eastern Conference in terms of the teams that they're going to be facing, and probably send a big message to the Columbus Crew too, that that's the next team that they're going to face, because this is definitely a team that, I said before, they are a team that is going to frustrate the hell out of you with the way that they play, and they look like probably the most dangerous side in terms of set piece opportunity, and that you saw a couple of times whenever they put the ball into the ball or put the ball into the box, you got to make sure you clear it away, because if you just leave an inch of space for them to basically head it in, they will of course do that. And yeah, I can't wait to see how they're going to be playing in the next game against Columbus, and that this, you know, I already talked about how they have a lot of confidence after able to get their first ever playoff win against Inter Miami. This will give them even more confidence now, the fact that they just beat the defending Eastern Conference, the defending Eastern Conference champ that represent the Eastern Conference in MLS Cup last year, and now they are definitely going to have a lot of momentum heading into that game against Columbus. But if you're TFC, I mean, there's this old saying about how when you head to the playoffs and when you go on a bit of a cold streak heading into the playoffs and you're playing against a tough opponent, that could be a big problem for you, and it was a problem for TFC in this game. I mean, you were hoping that them getting most of their attacker back would kind of improve on the problem they had down the stretch, but unfortunately those problems that they had down the stretch, which is scoring goals, continue to be the problem in this game, and they just could not solve the difficult puzzle that Nashville was putting against them in this game. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the review of this game. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this game? And actually now I'm going to be quickly going back to the Union versus Revs game, because I believe that game has already kicked off here in the second half. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.